Hello and welcome to Mostly Off Topics review of the LotR Rhovanion Deluxe box set for the Lord of the Rings LCG by Fantasy Flight Games. We're going to be covering the player cards in the Deluxe particularly, and in the main we're going to be focusing on the expanded Dell trait that kind of lends itself to the cards in this deck. But before we start, I think we should just cover a little bit of the lore of the game because I think it adds depth to when we're chucking cardboard around the table. So this area here is Rhovanion. As you can see, this map's from LOTRproject.com. Fantastic resource for all things Lord of the Rings. And you can see it sits to the north of this area being Gondor, Rohan, Mordor there. And the Forest of Mirkwood. So this is primarily kind of the area that the Hobbit covers. I think you can see the blue trail as they went from Hobbiton to Erebor. And Dale was, until it got destroyed by Smaug, a town that kind of lived in the shadow of Erebor. Erebor being a big dwarven kingdom, they used to produce lots of kind of armour and jewellery and dwarven goods of that nature. And just downstream from Thranduil's halls, the Elven King's halls in Mirkwood. So it sits kind of all the way between the dwarves and the elves. Smaug took over Erebor, and then got taken back at the end of the Hobbit in the Battle of the Five Armies. Bod the Bowman was a captain of the archers that took out Smaug, and his family kind of became kings of the Dale. And they moved from Esgaroth, which is the town upon the lake, and reclaimed Dale and kind of rebuilt it. The time frame that the main Lord of the Rings LCG is set in lives between the Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings. The sagas are obviously something different, and therefore Dale is in the ascendancy. The shadow has been pushed back further, and the traders of Dale are able to kind of move their goods around much more. And that's the fluff of Dale, really, is that they're traders, they're merchants, they buy and they sell. So they can bring in resources, they can spend that to get gear from the dwarves, gear from the elves, bring in mercenaries or their own people to kind of like fight and so on. And you'll find that a Dale-based deck is pretty capable. It's pretty capable even with a restricted card pool. There aren't very many Dale cards outside of this expansion, so if you're looking for a departure point, taking a core set, buying the LotR Rhovanion and then picking up the adventure packs that kind of going to be part of this cycle would not be a bad place to start. What I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of lead through each of the kind of cards in this deluxe in turn. The focuses on the Dell trait, and what the Dell trait seeks to do is it tries to gain advantage by putting attachments onto as many characters as possible. In normal Lord of the Rings LCG, attachments go onto heroes, but the Dell trait will try to put attachments onto characters, and Dell characters tend to get a buff or a bonus if they've got an attachment attached to them, and we'll kind of come across that as we get into the game. And essentially, if you're playing a Dale deck, what you want to be doing is going through your deck as quickly as possible, getting out as many of those attachments as possible, taking a pragmatic view as to where you're going to stick those attachments. So if you're able to take some risks, that is quite a good Dale player. And then you can use some of the cards that rearrange attachments on characters kind of later on down the line to kind of sort out the mess once you're stabilised. So the way in which you cover the early game is just get attachments out wherever you possibly can. And there's one key card in the Dale deck that really enables that playstyle. And then what you do is you use some of the other cards, rearrange them so that the attachments kind of go on to where they kind of really need to. And what we're going to do is we're just going to kind of walk away through the kind of cards in the Deluxe. We're going to talk a little bit about how to play them, a little bit of fluff on the heroes, and kind of just think, are they actually any good and what's their place in a deck? Spoiler, is a pretty good Deluxe, I think, for the Dale trait, and therefore it's reasonably well self-contained. You possibly won't get masses out of this if you're looking to kind of enrich other traits like Sylvan or Dwarf or Rohan or Gondor. You need to kind of look for some other decks, some other Deluxes for that. So let's start. So the first hero, Brand, son of Bane. So Bane was the son of Bard, so Brand is the grandson of Bard, and Brand fought in the War of the Ring, so the kind of battles that were covered by Lord of the Rings. It just wasn't around Gondor and Osgiliath and all that kind of places, and Minas Tirith. It was a battle across the whole of that northern area of Middle-earth. And the Easterlings attacked, and the Battle of Dale lasted 3 days. Brand died is going to die there, I guess, in this timeline, as did Dine Ironfoot, who you may remember from The Hobbit, and also pretty key card enabling the dwarf archetype in Lord of the Rings. And Brandson of Bane is a pretty strong cornerstone in any Dell deck. If you're going to build a Dell deck, you're going to want this hero and the other hero in this deck. So first off, any Dell character that's got an attachment gets +1, kind of like willpower. So first off, we've got a threat of 10, pretty middling. 2 willpower, 3 attack, 2 defense, 3 hit points. That's a alright stat line. 3 attack is always useful. 2 willpower will get enabled, I think, further on. The weakest point here, I think, is the 3 hit points and the 2 defense. One of the difficulties you'll face with Lord of the Rings is what do I do in the early game when I've got a monster swinging at me and you may be wanting to take attacks undefended. 3 hit points is kind of borderline as to whether that's realistic or not. So you may need to think elsewhere of how you're going to stabilise early game. But other than that, it's a pretty strong stat line. Also, any Dell character, hero and ally that you control with a player attachment gets +1 willpower. And you're going to be checking out a load of player attachments. What this kind of does is it helps a little bit with some of the spheres and some of the kind of focus in a Dell deck, because it means even a mediocre 1 willpower kind of character, if you get an attachment on that, it'll probably buff the character but also immediately boost willpower, so you can kind of get some good questing going, get a bit of a swarm, get some questing on the way. And most importantly, there's a response. After you play an attachment on a Dale character that doesn't have an attachment, you can draw a card, so it kind of replaces itself and it'll allow you to go through the deck to pull out your attachments. Key limitations: it has to be on a Dale character and they can't already have an attachment, so essentially it's the first attachment that you get. In leadership, so the sphere of resource acceleration, so there's some good stable cards. Gondor, looking at you, and it allows you to kind of generate those resources through the cards in leadership that are going to allow you to bring out allies and bring out kind of attachments pretty quickly, as benefits the deck. Okay, I think it also means that Dale is a good versatile deck or a solo deck. I don't think it particularly lends itself to multiplayer except for being a good support deck. You'll note a lot of the figures, kind of a lot of the benefits trigger from characters you control, so kind of sticking attachments left, right and centre isn't really where you're going to want to be. You're going to want to bring them onto your own deck, and therefore actually it manages a solo play pretty well. So the next card, another hero, is Bard, son of Brand. So essentially, the lad of the hero that we've just seen. He also fought in the War of the Ring, and he became king after the Battle of Dell, which killed his dad. He was aged 34. He inherited the bow that killed Smaug, if anybody's interested in that. After the War of the Ring, Dale became even more prosperous than it was before under the leadership of Bard, son of Brand. So Spirit hero, 9 threats. So you're looking at 19 threat if you plug these two guys in, and you've got leadership and you've got Spirit. 2 good, strong kind of spheres, and you can either kind of go lore or tactics depending upon which way you want to go. And I think there'll be a lot of dialogue in the community about who's the third hero in a Dale deck. Not going to cover that question particularly now. So what does he do? He's got 2/2/2 down his stat line, 3 hit points. Yeah, okay, so he's not particularly specialised, but if he's got an attachment, he's got 3 willpower, which is alright. Again, 3 hit points is possibly the kind of challenge there. So when you play an item attachment, he's considered to have printed leadership, lore and tactics icons. It's really important because if you're playing an attachment at 0 cost, you need to still have a printed resource match, even though you're not actually spending any kind of resources. So an item attachment he can put into play using his resources on his own, kind of irrespective of the sphere, so you can kind of build upon that. And then his response: when a character leaves play, return each attachment, attach that character to its owner's hand, limit once per phase. So if you lose 3 attachments from the same character because it's just been destroyed, jump blocking for instance, they'll all come back to your hand. If you've got 1 attachment on 3 characters, you're going to have to pick and choose which one of that. Responses are player initiated, you cannot do them, you can choose whether you want to or not. So you may choose to kind of not take one of a character just destroyed to take one that you know is going to be destroyed downstream, and it comes back to hand, which means you're going to have to pay the cost, but it keeps those things kind of going. One of the big downsides previously was if you loaded attachments onto a character like an ally and it died through direct damage, archery, whatever, everything went to the bin, and that was a big problem because you'd invested those resources for minimal kind of return. Also important to acknowledge, it's not attachments that are discarded, it's only if the character leaves play. So something like Cram, which is a leadership attachment which you discard to ready a hero, that attachment's still going to the bin. You don't get to reharvest that. So there's a couple of limitations there. Other than that, it kind of plays the cornerstone of the Dell deck because it's allowing you to play those attachments and it's keeping those attachments in play. So Bard and Brand, really kind of key heroes for a Dell deck and enable this kind of play style. So let's go and have a look at the rest of the cards now, but I'm going to start with what I think is the kind of key attachment actually, which is the King of Dale. We'll start here because it's very important, I think, for the rest of the descriptions to kind of look through what this is. So it's a spirit attachment, which is great for Bard. It costs 2 resources, which is less good because you possibly aren't getting it out first turn unless you kind of got some resource acceleration shenanigans. And you attach it to the Dale or Esgaroth hero, and in the planning phase you can exhaust King of Dale. And what this does is it means that you, for every different attachment that character has, player attachment that is, you reduce the cost of the Dale ally that you next play by 1 per attachment. So if you've got 3 different attachments on a character and you exhaust King of Dale, then the next Dale character that you bring into play is going to be reduced by 3. Okay. You don't. So King of Dale has to be on the. So King of Dale has to be on the character that you're seeking to count the attachments of, and also that ally does not require a resource match. So this is a way to bring allies out of sphere in, so you can play the full complement of Dale allies, irrespective of what spheres you bring into the table, and that's useful because you want the benefits of all the Dale allies, really. Certainly in the Deluxe you kind of want to make use of them all. If you weren't able to do this, then you'd have problems. So that ally doesn't require a resource match, which is pretty big, because if you've got a sphere that's kind of an off sphere that you've not really got many allies in, apart from 2 or 3 key ones, this allows you to contribute their kind of build up of resources through to other Dale allies. So Mulligan for King of Dale, if you're in a Dale deck, I guess is a takeaway because it's a key enabler of the kind of card. So let's just kind of go back to where we were, and let's have a look at the next card. So the Red Water Sentry. So the Carnan River, which kind of sits right on the east of Rhovanion, was where the Easterlings kind of came trundling across for the War of the Rings. So this is the Red Water, the river. Red Water is what it was also known as. So this card sits there, kind of looking out across it. It's a Dale warrior. It's got 3 resources. So quite expensive to bring in unless you got that King of Dale kind of attachment going. 1 attack, 2 defense, 3 hit points. But for every armor attachment you stick on this, is reduced by 1 cost, and the Red Water Sentry gets +1 defense and gains Sentinel whilst it has an armor attachment. There's a really strong synergy here with the Hallbuck of Mail, which is also in this box, which grants additional benefits to a character with Sentinel. So very quickly this could become a 4 defense Sentinel defender with 4 hit points, and if you get more Hallbuck of Mail on the character, can't do that. So this very quickly becomes a 4 defense, 4 hit point with Sentinel keyword. I really love getting these out, getting them out cheaply with King of Dale, using an off sphere to kind of help because of the lack of resource match, and it again is a really quick way to stabilise. So I would say that Red Water Sentry and Hallbuck of Mail are 2 of the things that you'd be kind of looking to try to mulligan for in that early game. Okay, and I really love the artwork in this. It just looks wintry, I guess. So the next one is a Spirit, which is kind of, you'd be kind of not surprised to know this is kind of going to be targeted on questing. It's a 2 resource ally, 1.111 down its kind of stat line. It gets +1 willpower and does not exhaust a quest while it's got an item attachment, so it would be questing for 2 willpower, not exhausting. It'd actually be questing for 3 willpower, not exhausting, if it's in a deck with brand, because it grants +1 willpower to all Dale. So really quite important to try to get these out. I find that what I can sometimes do is kind of just load it with whatever attachment I can find, item attachment, just right, boom, get on there. In the early game I don't really care what it is, I'm going to rearrange that later on down the line, and I will use them to quest, and I might be chump with them and kind of get them back and get the attachment reharvested. 2 resources, particularly if you've got some reduction with King of Dell, isn't kind of too bad, and therefore you can kind of cycle through these fairly quickly. Again, if you really kind of want to burst through some questing and kind of need to accommodate for an attack, then this is kind of a good way to be able to do that. Also kind of feeds into my versatile and solo, because you need to be able to do quest, defend, attack as part of your kind of all deck, so this helps achieve all 3 or 2 of the 3 of those together. And it's simple to get it up question for 3 willpower. So next we kind of move on to Warrior of Dale. The clue's in the name. 3 cost tactics ally, no willpower. It possibly have 1 or possibly 2 if it's kind of with brand. 2 attack, 1 defend, 3 hit points again. This is a weapon attachment reducer, so you reduce the cost of weapon attachments by 1. I would say that that's not so important, because you're probably trying to stick Bow of View onto it if you're able to, which is another card in this deck. But it gets +1 in range for a weapon attachment. So very quickly you can get this up to 3, 4 ranged attack. Range less important when I'm talking about solo, but more important when you're talking about multiplayer and being that versatile deck. Getting a couple of these out really helps you kind of churn through the enemies. 4 attack, 3 attack, not to be sniffed at all. So next, again, we're going to get Long Lake Trader. So we've had an ally from each of the spheres, we've had a Dale ally from each of the spheres in the pack. Fairly self-contained pack, not a bad departure point. Looks like the actor that played Faramir in the film, actually, so I don't know what he's doing out there. But it's a 2-cost lore ally. You can kind of bring this out with King of Dale if you choose not to have a lore ally and just kind of go Leadership Spirit Tactics or Leadership Spirit because of Pod's kind of ability. 1 spirit, 1 attack, 0 defense, 2 hit points. It's its action that's important here. You get to exhaust it to move an item attachment from one character to another. So this really helps you move from the early game to the mid to late game, where you really want your attachments on the ones that benefit from it. So if you've got out the kind of Northram Lookout, you've lobbed on the Bow of View, you've got out a Warrior of Dale later on down the line, and you want to move that weapon attachment across, you can exhaust Long Lake Trader to kind of just move it across in that way. Moving is not the same as playing. So if you move an attachment to another Dale character that didn't have attachment, you can't then draw a card. We'll kind of come on to that when we talk a little bit about bartering further down. So you can use the deck to bring out all 4 of the Dale allies. I would say of the 4, Long Lake Trader's probably a 2 of rather than a 3 of, because it doesn't have masses of utility in the early game when you're just kind of getting set up. You don't want it in your starting hand, for instance. You want it kind of to be drawn through the deck a little bit later on down the line, where you can be moving some of those attachments around, and you've got less need to stabilise quickly to be able to manage defence, attack, or a quest. So moving down onto the attachments then, this is an item attachment, Hornbook of Mail. Kind of talked about it when we talked about Redwater Sentry. It's a 1-cost attachment. It would be free onto the Redwater Sentry because of the armour keyword. Goes into Dale or Warrior character, limit 1 per character, and the attached character gets +1 defense, not to be sniffed at. Gets +1 hit point if it's got the Sentinel keyword. Attach this to your Redwater Sentry, it will gain +1 defense, it'll gain the Sentinel keyword from it, and then therefore it gets +1 hit point. Makes a lot of difference if you're kind of trying to absorb attacks that are 5 or 6 to swing that additional hit point, moving up to 4. And 1 leadership resource, this feels like something that you would want to be kind of sticking into a more traditional kind of murder death kill deck. Maybe if you're kind of running Baragon with a Gondorian shield and you just want some additional kind of defense onto that, additional hit points, you can really kind of start to play this, build it up. We've already talked about King of Dell, so I'll kind of not come on to that again. So we'll talk about Bow of View now. Mentioned it in the context of Warrior of Dale. It's a 0-cost tactics attachment, item, weapon, and you don't get the weapon benefit from Warrior of Dale. It is what it is. Attached to Dell or warrior character is restricted, so you could have 2 of these. Always amuses me that you're able to have 2 bows. After the attacked character is declared as an attacker, exhaust this to deal 1 damage to the defending enemy. Direct damage, it'll ignore its defense, and because you're exhausting bow of you can't then use it for something like foe hammer, which would require you to exhaust to draw cards. I've had situations whereby I've had 2 of these attached to 1 warrior of Dell, and you're doing 2 plus 2 plus 2 plus 1 plus 1, so that's 4, plus 2 direct damage, which kind of ignores armor, so you're kind of doing 6. Even just the 1 damage, just pinging the enemy, it may mean that an enemy dies 1 or 2 rounds sooner than it otherwise would have done. And you can only deal that 1 damage to the defending enemy, so you can't kind of do exhaust as an attacker and then say I'm going to hit something in the staging area or what have you. It has to be the enemy that you're kind of going for. And direct damage will be applied before you resolve the attack because it's as soon as it's declared as an attacker. Okay. So then we move on to the lore attachment, the map of Rhovanion. Again, 1 resource item attachment, triggers all the kind of Dell stuff as it kind of comes out, limit 1 per character, and after the attached character commits to the quest, place 1 progress in the active location. So again, this is when you commit to the quest, you kind of exhaust all your characters, you'll place 1 progress in the active location, not to be sniffed at, it's completely repeatable. If you keep it attached to the character, to a questing character, then you'll be able to kind of like enjoy its benefit. If you attach it to your kind of North Realm lookout, then they'll get the plus to willpower, the plus to willpower from Brand, and also be placing 1 progress on the active location. Whilst the active location doesn't reduce any threat, it means that you're less likely to be location locked because you've got a space to travel to. So I think this is pretty strong as well, certainly in this kind of deck. Then we have a neutral attachment, a neutral unique attachment, the Necklace of Girion. Girion was the Lord of Dell back when Smaug destroyed it, and this was a renowned necklace. 500 emeralds went into the creation of it, a thing of beauty and legend. It was one of the treasures of Erebor that was paid by the dwarves to Bard when kind of after the Battle of 5 Armies, and then was granted over to Thranduil from Bard. It's a massive boost for the character that has it. Plus 2 willpower is great, but an additional resource during the resource phase. So this is an early game card to get the most benefit from the 2 willpower and the additional resources. However, it comes out guarded. So the challenge you have with the Necklace of Girion is whether you can manage some additional threat and an additional location or an additional enemy to gain the benefit from it. So whilst it would be wonderful early game, are you going to be stabilised quickly enough? I think this is a kind of mid-game piece more realistically, and it's a definite kind of think before you play. Consider what's in discard, consider your board state before you kind of chuck this out. Because as soon as you play it, you want to be able to clear the enemy or the location to be able to claim it to get the benefit from it. It does, however, pay for itself in 1 round, so you get a really quick kind of net positive. So even if you are playing it mid-game, or even as you're kind of starting to hit the later game, it will really benefit you because it's so quick on its return on investment. Okay, so let's have a look at some of the events here. We have Traffic from Dell, which is a 1-cost leadership resource acceleration. You play it in Pang, you choose a Dell hero that you control. 1 resource to that Dell hero is pulled for every other character you control with a player attachment. You can only play it 1 per round. I think this is going to net somewhere 2 to 3 resources. You're likely to have 4 characters out with attachments, so I think you're kind of netting 2 to 3 resources each round, straight onto whichever one you kind of like choose. It doesn't have to be the person that pays for the resources, so you can put it onto Brand, you can put it onto Bane, or onto the 3rd hero you're running. But again, it's a really good accelerant. Even in the early game where you might only have 2 kind of resources out, if it enables you to get an extra ally because you've gained the 1 resource net, then that's not a bad thing. Even if you get 2 resources net in a different sphere by paying the 1 leadership, that is a great payoff early game. So I'd have 3 of these and I'd be looking to use them as aggressively as I kind of can. Play order is important, so you could play your attachments out first. You draw some cards from that. You could then play this once you've got most of your attachments out, and then you get the ability to play an ally with the resources you just gained. So think about the sequencing that you're going to be playing, and Traffic from Dell I think is a definite kind of must include there. Next event is To Arms, a spirit. Choose an ally with a player attachment. Ready that ally. It's 0, and it's in one of your Dale heroes sphere. So again, this is just readying. You'll be doing what it needs you to do to fulfill its criteria anyway as quickly as you can. And again, it helps if it doesn't matter whether the attachment particularly benefits the ally, just get it out there, and that nail turns on To Arms, it turns on some readying. So you may take an attack on a Warrior of Dale, ready it so you can hit back at the enemy that you kind of just done. That Warrior of Dale maybe having a Hauberk of Mail on it. It's kind of not the most optimum, but it allows and enables these things. Then you can use the kind of long lake traders or bartering, which is the lore event we're going to talk about, to just rearrange it later on down. The tactics event is Valor of the North. Plays off with characters within a next event, text event is Valor of the North, 0 cost. After a character declares an attack or a defender against an enemy with an attachment. So this isn't that the your character has an attachment, it's that the enemy has an attachment. So traps decks and also some of the encounters in this deluxe and the cycle shove conditions or attachments onto the enemies. But your character gets +3 to attack and +3 to defense until the end of this attack. So not the end of the phase, nothing like that. So this enables you to kind of defend or kind of attack more strongly against something in attachment. Trap decks are really good because they kind of enable you to choose which enemy is going to have that attachment and therefore a little bit more control over the situation. This is the least compelling at the moment of all the kind of event cards in the deluxe. I think it's probably the least compelling for me in the deluxe. Traps are more lore than they are tactics, so it may be a little bit hard to squeeze in that. But I assume as we kind of go through and find more encounter decks, that there will be decks that need to have or that really benefit from having this card in them as we kind of come across those encounters. Next event is Bartering, mentioned a couple of times, 0 cost lore event. You choose a ready player attachment, a character you control. You return that character's attachment to your hand, to the owner's hand, and then you reduce the next attachment played by X, where X is the one that you return back. So if you've got a Hauberk of Mail on your Warrior of Dale, and you want to get it onto your Red Water Sentry, you can place Bartering to reduce, to bring that Hauberk of Mail back to hand, reduce the next attachment you pay by the cost of it. So effectively that Hauberk of Mail goes in free. It doesn't have to be used this way, but this is one way to do it. And then you can stick it onto the Red Water Sentry. If that's the first attachment the Red Water Sentry gets, you can also then trigger Bard's ability. Brand's ability, sorry, I get Bard and Brand mixed up quite a bit, because it is actually from play, because it's coming from your hand, you're playing that. So this is a preferential in some ways card than Exhaust and a Long Leg Trader, because you're able to take an attachment, bring it to hand, play it again effectively for free, and then trigger off anything that happens, allowing you to draw a card. So you're a net card up and have not exhausted an ally, so you got an action of the ally. So I really like bartering for that. I have played and recorded a kind of video where I use a minimum purchase deck from RingsDB to kind of go through. So that's just a single core, I believe, this deluxe, and I just run it against Passage through Mirkwood because that's a quest most people know. And you'll be able to see that, and that'll be up, and I'll link to it in the description after this video. So I hope you've liked that review. You can tell I'm quite positive and enthusiastic about this deluxe. I think it's a good departure point. I don't think there's particularly a bad card in it. It feels quite tight. It feels quite narrow, though, in terms of it being built around Dale, which is kind of the synergy with the area in Middle Earth that it's been kind of set in. So that's not such a bad thing. I know other cards in this cycle are going to play up the Bjornings. They're going to play up kind of Thranduil and the Elven hauls, but this Deluxe is very much kind of the Dell archetype. There are other Dell cards kind of available in previous APs, but I wouldn't say any of those are necessary or particularly powerful for a Dell deck. But I think get this Deluxe, play the 2 heroes, play King of Dale, chuck in as many of these cards as you can legitimately do so, add in a 3rd hero and maybe the staple cards that come from that, and kind of give it a run. If you enjoyed the content, kind of like or subscribe to the channel. We've got more videos kind of coming out. I know we've been a bit infrequent previously, but we're kind of pushing them out a little bit more now. And I hope you've enjoyed listening. Thanks.